Newly revealed financial disclosure documents reveal that Fed Chair Jerome Powell sold a substantial amount in index fund holdings in October of 2020, up to as much as $5 million, while the rest of the country reeled from the financial fallout of the pandemic. This sale took place just before the Dow sunk by 1,600 points, or 6% of its value, in only a month.
According to the American Prospect, Powell's net worth in 2020 was between $20 and $55 million. The Fed's current code of conduct for officials does not bar them from buying and selling stocks, despite their proximity to institutions principal in influencing the larger economy. However, it does mandate that, quote, information obtained by officials of the system should never be used for personal gain. Joining us now to discuss are two great friends of the show, editor-in-chief at Real News Network and host of the Working People's Podcast, Max Alvarez, and former White House Communications Director, Alyssa Farah. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
So, Max, I'm sure this probably doesn't trouble you at all. You're probably perfectly fine, happy even that to see Jerome Powell getting ahead of the crippling financial situation in the pandemic.
Look, guys, I didn't always look like this, right? I used to look younger. I used to look more vibrant. I mean, this face is what living in this system, does to me. Seeing stuff like this, I never want to get so jaded that, I'm not shocked by it. I'm not horrified and angered by it. But man, it is approaching that point, and what a sad state of affairs it is to see something like this and just be like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds pretty consistent with how things have been going, right? Business Insider, I think, reported just yesterday that, because let's look even broader than this. So Business Insider reported yesterday that 40 members of Congress in the past year have violated the Stock Act, the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act that was passed after the Great Recession, and that really doesn't do anything, right? I mean, it's it makes me think back when, Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama were trying to unionize with Amazon, right? And now, after that union election failed, we found out that Amazon really broke the law, really did a lot of underhanded things, and the workers may get another shot at voting for a union. But I had a lot of people ask me, well, doesn't Amazon get penalized for breaking the laws? Barely. The laws are so lax that it does not act as a deterrent. I mean, according to this Business Insider article, for members of Congress who violate that Stock Act, who use their insider information to enhance their personal wealth on the stock market, they get slapped with a fine of $200. That's how much they tip at the cocktail bar at night when they're hanging out with their buddies across the aisle. That is nothing. Who thinks that's going to be a deterrent? And remember, we are looking at this case. We're looking at the 40 members of Congress who have violated the Stock Act just this year. A year after the massive insider trading scandal in 2020, where, high-ranking folks, both on Republican and Democrat side, Richard Burr, Kelly Loeffler, Dianne Feinstein, this was in February of 2020, right before the markets crashed, when the reality of COVID really set in. They used their insider knowledge, and they used that to, basically get out of Dodge with their stocks and try to kind of enhance their personal wealth, or at least keep themselves from losing more money than they knew the rest of the population was going to use. The corruption is baked into the system, and these little mechanisms to have Congress regulate themselves are clearly not working.
And Alyssa, what's it going to take to get to a place where, say, Fed officials cannot trade stocks? So at least this is how pitiful the system is. That at least Jerome Powell's in an index fund. Whereas you have members of Congress buying these individual stocks of individual companies that they have influence over in a variety of different ways, or information into, and then watching those stocks move up or down and benefit them. So at least Powell's in an index fund, but the Fed chairman, with just a press conference, with just a tweet, with a comment to a reporter, can move that index fund up or down. How can you have a system where you can personally move the value of your own account? Because over time, people are going to take that opportunity to do that for themselves.
So there's a few ways to do it. And I'm glad Max brought up the February 2020 situation where you had several sitting senators basically invest ahead of the pandemic at a time when the Senate had gotten briefings on where things were going with COVID, which is, it's ridiculous. It's not how the system should work. But I would say a few things. For senior ranking government officials who have access to market-moving sensitive information or themselves have the ability to move markets, you could certainly have them siloed off from their investments. It would not make sense to say that they just simply can't trade stocks. We're never going to get there. But we could easily build into the system requirements that say you cannot personally make any kind of you can't actually yourself make decisions within the stock market. You have to be totally siloed off from your investments. Here's the one thing that I'll note, though. People of this network that we're discussing, they honestly very rarely manage their own portfolios. In the Jerome Powell case, I wouldn't be shocked if he had very little to do with where he was investing and he has somebody who oversees his portfolio. But there's a way you could legally have a requirement that is more than, this $200 slap on the wrist after the fact that truly silos people off from their ability to invest when they have market-moving sensitive information or themselves can move markets.
Alyssa, I think an issue is that it just looks it looks crooked. It looks unethical, even if it is someone else who's managing the fund and the figure doesn't have much to do with it. This is still a person in government in an important policy-making role, and the appearance of impropriety can be impropriety to some extent.
Oh, completely agree. And I mean, when I was in the federal government in the senior executive service, we had access to market-moving sensitive information. I remember at a time it was related to tariffs that we were directly told, you cannot use this information in any way to advance yourself economically. I can't tell you how that was actually enforced. I didn't, but I follow the system and follow the rules. But I'd be curious, how this is actually day-to-day enforced for government officials who have that sort of information. And the Stock Act is just not doesn't go far enough, I would say.
Yeah, and Alyssa, did you hear anybody talking about being tempted to do anything with that information?
I mean, only in my own head. No, listen, I didn't, but it wouldn't surprise me is the thing. Not everybody just does the right thing and chooses to. And I don't doubt that that's something that, affects many people who are in senior executive service, but I didn't hear it personally. Right,
it's crazy. There's $10,000 on the table, and nobody will stop you from picking it up off the table and walking out of the room, but you really shouldn't. That system's not going to hold up very long.
System's not going to work.
Somebody's going to pick up that $10,000.
All right, we got to leave it there. Max, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll be back with more Rising right after this.